The video you're about to see was funded by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It chronicles a group of individuals and organizations working together in Western Massachusetts to create a capacity building model to address racism and racial equity. The video offers up real-life scenarios that happen every day in our society. We hope that it also offers tools for all of us to continue learning and growing and working together.
I see it as people building their resources, their knowledge, and preparation to do actual work around equity, racial equity.
To be able to be practicing racial equity within the agency, I feel like you can't really do it in the community until you're doing it well in the agency.
I believe that it is about building an understanding of how racism has impacted our world for centuries, and building the understanding of historical practices and policies, and just the way that mindsets have been encouraged to be formed.
When we talk about capacity building I think has two parts to it. The first is training, and training really promotes awareness to recognize when there's a problem.
For racial equity capacity building, there's kind of two focuses on there. One is the racial equity work that is in itself is a very hard task for any organization or any individual to strive to do, and especially on a day-to-day basis. So racial equity work is hard enough. When you add capacity building on top of it, I define that as training, technical assistance, support, best practices to build the capacity of organizations to embark on successful racial equity work. So a lot of us can say we're doing it and we're doing racial equity work, but when we don't build our own internal capacity, understand the literature, understand the evidence, the research around racial equity work, we could be doing a disservice to those that we serve if we don't first build our own internal capacity.
How do we translate and build the tools that someone, whether that's in an organization that's trying to address racial equity in the structure, the infrastructure of our businesses, or whether it's a community member, you need to know the tools that are at your disposal in order to advocate and create change. And it's all about creating the foundations for how do I make change happen.
The pilot program, or the framework that we've developed, has multiple dimensions. And it's sort of multi-tiered as well. So embedded in the framework is awareness, education, skills building, support, and coaching, right? There is some consulting going on as well, but coaching is probably the better of the two. And so we have a group of folks who come together, which we call community and practice. And that group of people help support each other within the organization. We learn together, we talk, we share, we are building trust, and we're doing all of those kinds of things so that we can support each other in the work that we're doing. I would say that the work to help an organization sort of look at their policies would be more of education and skills building around looking at policies through an equity lens. In this case, it could be a racial equity lens, it could just be an equity lens, but really looking at those policies. And so as part of our process, we would coach organizations. We train them and then coach them in, examining the policies that they have and understanding the basis of those policies and how they might be affecting their employees.
Levi, it's time to get ready to go. Get your stuff together.
Yes, Mom.
Let me get your picture. Thank you.
this scenario with the mom and the child is not unique to this organization, and it's not unique to women of color. This can happen anytime, and it probably does all the time.
Yvonne, could I get some copies? Guess not.
Good morning, Susan.
Good morning.
I'm so sorry I'm late. The buses were running late.
I understand. I'm glad you made it here safely.
Thank you.
Oh, excuse me. I have to take this. I'll come and check in with you in a bit.
Okay, no problem.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Susan.
Hi.
May you please come to my office?
Sure thing. Okay.
Thanks. Could you close the door, please? Did you see what time Ivana arrived today?
It's Ivana.
Whatever, it's the same difference.
No, it isn't. Her name is Ivana. And she was just in my office letting me know why she was late.
Well, I have to say, I think this has happened way too many times. Honestly, I think it's time for some disciplinary action.
I don't think that's necessary. She is responsible and she always delivers. She's a good worker and she shouldn't be reprimanded for something out of her control. Should you know, she takes public transportation to work. And a few other parents are also experiencing difficulties with drop-off for school. Instead of taking disciplinary action, we should see to it to change our policies to help parents like Ivana.
I think the conversation between the supervisor and the manager around whether or not that policy was disproportionately affecting that mom is really important.
We have divided our work into kind of 3 focus areas. One is our achieving equity in terms of our own staff and looking within our own walls. What are we doing? We employ over 2,500 people of the region's workforce. We serve over 45,000 individuals a year. And so when we look internally with BHN, we try to achieve equity in our policies and our procedures and say, hey, we have 2,500 staff. Are we equitable? Are our policies and procedures fair, and are they equitable? Did we have a policy that's inadvertently affecting a single working mother who is just struggling to make it to work every day? Did we look at how what we put in place are affecting our workforce? So we try to break it down in that space and make sure that we achieve equity with our workforce. And then we have to make sure that we're looking at ways in which we achieve equity for the 45,000 or so people that we serve every day. And that means changing our hours. If our hours don't correspond to what certain communities need, if you have a mother that doesn't get off at 5 o'clock and she has to go to work again at 7, can she be seen from 5 to 7 because that's the only time that she has? How do we change policies and procedures around that?
An organization that is wanting to be on a journey of equity, right? They want to be an equitable workplace, might start with training, right? They may start with EDI training. They may even start with something very basic like team building, right? So that people can start to trust each other in those spaces before they start talking about those difficult topics, right? Or having those difficult conversations. So if they were coming to the pilot, again, I would say to them, let's look at what's going to be best for your organization. It may be a very basic like race and racism 101 sort of training, or it might be, going straight into cultural humility and just depending on where they are at.
Are you ready for this training at our expense?
Unfortunately, I leave these training sessions worse than when I came in.
I'm happy our organization's investing in EDI training.
I am too. I really love the learning process, but I really hope that it's not one of those opportunity cop-outs where they say they're doing EDI, but they're not really doing the work.
You're right. I really hope that isn't the case.
This training is going to be such a waste of time. Tell me about it. I don't need this. How about we skip out and grab lunch instead? Let's do it.
They gonna come
Sharon is Karen.
I'm kind of hungry, y'all.
And they're the ones who need the training the most.
During training, if we were doing a cultural humility training, we talk about what is cultural humility? We talk about what is culture first. We talk a little bit about humility. We talk about the difference between cultural humility and cultural competence. And then we dive into the tenets of cultural humility. And there are 4 of them. The first one is about self-reflection, self-critique. We do activities to help people to figure out how they can reflect on their day-to-day. Having a what we call accountability buddy that you can go to and say, hey, I had this experience, I'm not sure how to process it, can you talk me through that, right? So that's the first tenet, and we do a lot of activities around that. The second 2 tenets are really around relationship building. How do we build relationships with other folks knowing that there is power and privilege that might show up in those relationships and likely will show up in those relationships? How do we navigate that? And so we talk a lot about that, but we also do exercises for people to practice and learn the skills of developing those relationships. So calling in, calling out if necessary, apologizing, moving relationships forward, building relationships, and so on and so forth. And then the last tenet is really about institutional accountability. And this one's a hard one, right? Because it's very easy to change your own behavior. It's harder to get your organization to change, right? So as these organizations are coming on board, we say, let's talk about what is the responsibility of the institution in racial equity or in equity in general. And how can you live up to the first 3 tenets, self-reflection, right? It could be a constant feedback loop or something like that. And how do you build relationships within and also outside? Building relationships with the community, building relationships with those who you're providing services to. So within those trainings, we do both education, skills building, and activities to help people understand those concepts.
Hey Jay, I was just about to call you.
Hey, what's up?
I'm noticing that a lot of my employees are not thrilled to be doing EDI work, and I'm just not sure of what to do.
What are the EDI activities your organization is participating in?
We started with the EDI training, and I just received an email that all except a few attended, and many of them were not happy that the majority of our employees decided not to show.
Well, the reality is that this work is hard, and you have to keep at it, even when you are feeling opposition. Try to strategize ways in which you can keep all of your employees accountable and continue to demonstrate the importance of this work. If they see it in you first, then they'll trust the process.
So we got 2 trainings, cultural humility and racism, and we did this all through the whole organization to all the staff. And then we started looking at our practices, and the thing with it is after we had the trainings, then is when everything kind of really started to shift, and some people left the organization and some people stayed, but there was a lot of conversations that we needed to have.
The continuum is a researched best practice, and it's basically an arrow which goes in both directions. And so it shows where people or organizations might be not thinking about racism and the way it plays out in our society, all the way to a vision for where racism doesn't play out anymore in our society, because we've all come to a place where it's been transformed, if you will. So those are the 2 ends of the spectrum, and in between they have different steps or different places where organizations or people could see themselves.
The board has decided to move forward with the build of the community center. The project will begin in the coming weeks. It's about 10 miles outside of the city.
10 miles. Are you kidding? You're kidding.
Well, hold on. The community center will be equipped with a state-of-the-art fitness center, an activity room that can accommodate gatherings and meetings, and easy access to resources.
This is exactly what you companies do. You come in and you take over our city for what? To check off a community input box? We wanted the community center, but here in the heart of our city.
The work that needs to be done is multidimensional. It cannot be just one thing. It cannot be just the training, right? It cannot be just policy changes. It cannot be, just the going to the community and getting information. It has to be multidimensional. It has to incorporate all of the things that I mentioned: awareness, education, understanding, skills building, application, support systems, and accountability.
The community is having some difficulty understanding why we picked the specific location for the new center. But I'm sure once we explain to them...
Explain to them what, for Christ's sake? We're building a new community center. You'd think they'd be grateful.
Well, do we even know why they don't want the new community center?
It's not that they don't want the new community center. It's the location that they disagree with.
Oh, were there realtors at this feedback session? Architects, builders, city planners, perhaps?
Well, where do they want to put the center?
They would actually prefer the center to be built right within the community.
Now, that's just not possible. Changing locations right now would increase costs of the project significantly. Now is not the time to make changes. Listen, I say we just push through and build the community center. I'm sure once they see the new center, they'll quiet down.
Really, Vince? They'll quiet down? Really? You know, you act like you're talking about a bunch of children who can't get ice cream from an ice cream truck or something like that. We're talking about families. Look, we're right here, the families. Real people, architects, builders, lawyers, doctors. Like, it's not like we just walked into their community, like we went under their pretense. Now it feels like we're just checking the community input box.
An organization like this, on its surface, looks like it is far along on the continuum, you know, above the 50% mark, let's say. But the fact that the conversation went the way it did amongst the board members says to me that perhaps they're not as far along as they think that they are. So I would then say they're probably closer to the 25% because they are essentially talking the talk, not really walking the walk. Now, that doesn't mean that people can't express their opinions about what should happen, but if you are going to go to people and you're asking them to give their expertise, right, about their community, or if you're asking their advice on how to move forward, you gotta listen, right? You gotta listen and you gotta incorporate it. Now, maybe you can't do everything and that's fine, but you can't just say, well, you know, we're doing the best we can. Don't go to them if that's the case, right? So if you really want to have the community be participants in the changes, then you really got to listen.
I think we've come a long way in 3 years. I think we are at the point in the continuum where we could share what we've learned and offer technical assistance, offer training to other organizations looking to do it. I think we have a lot of solid examples from changing our board to represent the communities that we serve. We have more people of color on our board than ever. We have more people of color on our executive leadership team. When we first started the work, I was the only person of color on the leadership team and had been in that role for a long time. BHN is a 70-something year organization, and the leadership team just didn't reflect the organization. Now it does. Besides me, we have 3 or 4 or 5 other people on the executive leadership team that represent communities of color. So I think we're there on the spectrum. I think we're probably, I would say, more than halfway through, but we still have a lot more to learn as we see every day. People of color at BHN in particular still face a lot of challenges, especially those looking to advance and to grow their career. And that's why we have, you know, programs and initiatives around that right now, specifically looking at racial equity work with advancing people of color throughout BHN. But I think we're at a good point where we could offer some support and technical assistance to other organizations and say, this is what we did, this is what we learned, this was a mistake, it didn't work for us. You don't have to suffer the same things, and then we can offer that kind of support to other folks.
I think there are some of us who've done some of this work, but we don't sit there and think that we have achieved, we're not pulling people up. I think we're trying to identify the kind of the mountain tops that we're going to, and we're trying to get there together. And so as anybody who has ever gone on a journey with somebody, so everybody's bringing their own baggage, and sometimes that baggage is heavy and you might need some help carrying it up. Sometimes people can move faster, sometimes people move slower, and if you want to go together, you really got to figure out how to get everybody there, right? And to find out where to meet everybody's needs so you can get to that ultimate outcome.
There are so many reasons why I think, especially at the Planning Commission, where we touch on topics like transportation, economic development, public health, community development, zoning, things like that, land use. You see racial equity issues touching on literally every project, every aspect of our work in communities, and we serve 32 municipalities that are pretty diverse across the whole of Berkshire County. And if we're not intentionally trying to, take down like the culture of white supremacy in our communities and to identify racial inequities like in our own work and in our plans, in our projects, all we're doing is progressing them.
There's a tremendous amount of data that shows us that in any realm that there are disparities. You can look at education, there are disparities. You could look at health, there are disparities. You could look at the criminal justice system, there are disparities. You could look at financial systems, there are disparities. So looking at all of that and just being able to have these conversations, lay it out on the table, and just trying to be as honest as possible.
Well, I want to have an organization that is representative of the communities that we serve, and that we actually are serving people of color in a way that is respectful and culturally appropriate.
The team that we've been building with the Women of Color Health Equity Collective and the other organizations that are a part of the advisory board has been an opportunity to share and to be vulnerable and to feel challenged, but to grow and maybe sometimes apologize or take risks to challenge others to think in a different way. Mm-hmm. So it's been a very, uplifting experience, I would say, to work with so many incredible people that are willing to share about their journeys. And I think that's the crux of how we grow as humans.
When you have employees that are going to personnel, HR, and nothing is really being done, there's excuses being made saying, oh, they didn't really mean it, or you mistook it, or just suck it up, or I don't believe that. So that's why I think capacity building, you need a whole unit, not just 3 out of 12 people. All 12 people should be on the same page.
Because I want to contribute to healing our society and creating a better place for everyone, regardless of who we are.
Mm-hmm. I would say jump in and try and know that it's hard, and don't turn back because it's hard. Don't stop because it's hard. It's worth it. It's important. We really need, as funders, to change how we do our work. We really need to be more inclusive. We need to be more bottom-up, more involved voices of more people that have been left out of power, and really work hard to push that work.
Jump in and do it. Everybody needs to make a change. If your organization is too small and you're not really encountering racism, you're still finding out. You're still finding out if your thinking is correct. There's so many abbreviations and acronyms now that you need an education on it.
To kind of like suck it up with the discomfort and engage with a consultant or a group in your community to just do it.
And if leaders are leading organizations and they are willing to get deep into this work and grow themselves, then that can only transpire into organizations in our region growing as well.
Take your time. Look internally for the work that, look at metrics. What is it that you don't have? And start addressing those metrics and start. That's the advice, because it takes a long time and it's never done. So I would say start, but take a look at those metrics, make sure you have the time, make sure that you let other people know that this is important work.
I think we need to force racial equity to take center stage. There's just so much evidence in the health literature, in the social sciences literature, that we have a problem. And when we have an ex-president who stokes racial tension at every opportunity, when we have police who are supposed to protect and serve but don't, based on the color of our skin, when we have so many issues in our communities where we have violence that stems from either disagreements or misunderstandings based on someone's race, we have a problem and we need to solve that. We need to hit it head on, and it needs to be center stage. And when we can open these conversations like we have in Western Massachusetts, I think we need to use that as a model for creating change across the country.